Instead of a solid color, or even a color gradient, sometimes a web page can be enhanced with a background image, maybe something that carries on a theme, or just a pleasing pattern as a base. In this session, we explore style properties for backgrounds of web pages and other elements, and places and ways to locate useful images. Let's get right to it. Background-related properties. To get the right idea to start with, you need to understand that a box can have multiple layers to its background. The base layer is specified by the background color property, which we discussed in the previous session. Then additional properties describe images to be layered on top of the background color. The driving factor is the background image property, which points to an image, usually using a URL. For example, background image : URL parenthesis images / wb00516_.gif. Now recall from the previous session that a background image may also be a color gradient. For this lecture, we just focus on using URLs. Now, a background image property can have a comma-separated list of images, say background image URL pic1.jpg, URL pic2.jpg, URL pic3.gif. Now each image represents a layer. The first image is the top, and later images are lower layers. For other background-related properties in the same style rule, there must be as many values as there are layers. Well, if there are more values than layers, extra values are ignored, and if there are fewer values than layers, the list of values is repeated enough times to match the number of layers. Anyway, usually you'll just have one image. So, what other background-related properties are there? Here's an overview of a few, which we'll explore in more detail shortly. Background repeat. How should an image be repeated? And your possible values are no repeat, repeat X, repeat Y, repeat, which is the default, space, and round, and we'll get to those shortly. Background position. The position of the image within its layer. And you can say left, center, right, top, bottom, or some kind of length attribute. And background size specifies the scaling of an image. And you can specify a length attribute or the default of auto or cover or contain. Now, it would be nice to demonstrate using these properties, but first we ask, where can you find images for your background to work with? Here's some ideas. Search for images on your system. In Windows 10, Microsoft does not supply as many images as they used to, but you might look in these directories: Windows/web/4K/wallpaper/Windows, Windows/web/screen, Windows/web/wallpaper/flowers, Windows/web/wallpaper/Windows, and Windows/web/wallpaper/Windows 10. And you may find others as you poke around. Also, you might already have some pictures of your own you know you want to use. Hire a professional. You'll get a more professional look tailored to your business or hobby. Create your own. I saw a site where the author scanned in various patterns he finds, then trims them and combines them. Search the web. Try free web page background images. Now remember, you may have to pay or provide acknowledgement, or not. You may find images you can use with no fees or strings. Read the provided information carefully. Remember the site pixabay.com we discussed in the Windows course. For lecture and lab purposes, we'll use some images provided with the lab materials and advanced web files/images. Here's a snapshot of the images provided with these course materials. This includes some background images I found, a couple of logos, and some pictures I took on trips to Japan. One important point here, you don't want huge images. They slow down loading of your web pages significantly, thus frustrating your users. Most of these pictures are under 10 kilobyte in size. The largest is the picture named waiting.jpg, which is 1.4 megabytes. So let's start with images, .jpeg, .png, .bmp, and so forth for backgrounds. Now it might seem cool, for example, to have the Torii Gate picture from Japan as the background image for a page about a trip to Japan. So we might code a style rule like this: .back, background image, :URL, parenthesis, images / torigate.jpg. Then, working off our earlier Takayama page, we set the body element to be body class equals back, and we see the result as this. Yikes! Here we see the concrete effect of having repeat being the default value for the background repeat attribute. That implies repeat the image both horizontally, repeat X, and vertically, repeat Y, as many times as will fit on the page. So, let's see what happens when we turn background repeat off. So now we have back, background image, URL, parenthesis, images / torigate.jpg, background repeat, :no repeat. Now our page looks like this. Hey, what happened to our picture? Well, it's hidden behind the logo. You might be able to spot some part of it in the upper left-hand corner. So what if I use background position center? Well, at first it looks like the image is now totally gone. But if you scroll down, you'll see this. So the browser did exactly what you asked, centered the image on the page. I got it. We need to use background size to make it as large as the page, while keeping the height to length ratio the same so the picture is not distorted. So drop the background position attribute and add background size 100%. Now we get this. And we see by the picture is not distorted, but it has been expanded beyond its natural resolution, so it gets fuzzy. Well, we can play with the size percentage, but then it doesn't fit in the boundaries of the page. And besides, notice that it's really hard to read the content of the page. The background overwhelms the content. So some notes at this point. Use images to enhance the content. Be careful not to overwhelm. And you might be able to use several layers of images, placing each one carefully to create a background montage. But it might be simpler to simply include image elements in the content itself. I've found that a simpler, more pleasant approach can be achieved using patterns as background. For example, using wb00516_.gif from our lab files, as in this style rule, and let this image repeat, which is the default. It creates a pleasing effect, like this. So this has more texture than the solid color or color gradient, and yet does not overwhelm the content of the page. Now, let's briefly explore the background-related properties we mentioned earlier. Background repeat, how an image should be repeated. And you can specify no repeat, or repeat X, or repeat Y, or repeat, or space, or round. So, an image can be repeated horizontally, repeat X, or vertically, repeat Y. Generally, you need to specify both an X value and a Y value, not separated by a comma. If only one is specified, the standard implies the default value for the second. That is, if you code background repeat :1 value, the browser assumes you've specified the X value and then assigns the Y value. So, background repeat 1 value implied second value, as follows. If you specify repeat X, then that's implied repeat X, no repeat. If you specify repeat Y, that's implied no repeat, repeat Y. If you specify repeat, it implies repeat X and repeat Y. If you specify space, it implies space, space, and round implies round, round, and no repeat implies no repeat, no repeat. For example, background repeat, repeat X, shows this for the Torii Gate and this for the pattern. In both cases, the image is repeated along the top. But if you specify background repeat, repeat Y, then it shows this for the Torii Gate and this for the pattern. And here, the image is repeated along the side. The space choice instructs the browser to repeat the image as many times as possible with no clipping. If the image doesn't fit in an even number of times, insert space between the images. So here we are, background repeat space. And it shows this for the Torii gate, the image fits evenly, but you look over here at the pattern and you can see the space is horizontal and vertical because the pattern does not fit an even number of times. The round choice instructs the browser to repeat the image as many times as possible. If this is not a whole number of times, rescale the image so a whole number of repeats does fit evenly. And now with the repeat round, and the Torii gate looks this way and the pattern looks this way, which is the same as if we had said repeat. Another background related property is background position. Position of the image within its layer. For a horizontal spec, you say left or center or right and then specify a length or percentage value, one of those four choices. For a vertical space, you say top or center or bottom or length or percentage value. And if you specify a single value, you can say left or center or right or top or bottom or length or percentage. And again, the browser assumes certain results from this. So again, you specify two values, the first for the horizontal value and the second for the vertical value, with no comma between the values. If only one is specified, the other is assumed to be center. The default is 0%, 0%, which places the upper left corner of the image into the upper left corner of the element. Note that a value of 100%, 100% places the lower right corner of the image in the lower right corner of its containing area. Note, length is a number followed by a length unit, for example 10 pixels or 20 points or 2 centimeters, or a percent sign, for example 0% or 20% or something else. So, if we set up this definition, background image, URL images / misc297.jpg, background position center, background repeat Y, then we see this fanciful page layout. This property might be especially useful if you have multiple images, thus multiple layers, and then position each image in its layer so collectively they set up the feeling you're after. For example, just expanding the previous example by adding one image and positioning it on the right. So now, here's our first example with two background images. Background image URL images misc232.jpg, URL images / misc297.jpg, background position right center, background repeat Y. So notice the first image has position right while the second has position center, and they both have repeat as repeat Y, and the result looks like this. Background size specifies scaling of an image. You specify either a length or percentage value, or auto, which is the default, or cover, or contain. Specify one or two values. If only one is specified, the other is assumed to be auto. Auto uses the natural height and/or width and aspect ratio of an image if these are not explicitly specified by a length or percentage. Or coding cover or contain means you omit the length or percentage values. Cover scales the image to its largest size such that both the width and the height can fit inside the positioning area. Contain scales the image to its smallest size such that both its width and height completely cover the background positioning area. Let's try some examples. We'll use the image spiderweb.gif to run some experiments to explore various background size values. We'll take the defaults for background position, center, and background repeat, which is repeat. So here's the image. Background size experiment 1, default of auto, we see this, which is not too surprising. We see the images repeated horizontally and vertical. But notice the image fits about 5.5 times across and a little less than 4.5 down, and the image retains its shape. Now, if we code background size 20%, 50%, then we see this. And you can see the image was condensed horizontally to fit 5 across. 20% width times 5 copies equals 100%. And stretched vertically to fit 2 rows. 50% times 2 copies is 100%. So the image is distorted to fit these criteria. For example 3, experiment 3, we test out background size contain, which gives us this image. We see the image retains its correct proportions, and if it were enlarged anymore, it would not fit. However, there is room for a partial repeat. For experiment 4, we code background size cover, and we get this image. The image is stretched with no distortion. Keep in mind, the image actually has white space around it, and that participates in any change in width and height properties. Finally, to demonstrate using a background color and a background image from the standard document, we borrowed this example. Background color gray, background image URL images/flower.png, background position 50%, 40%, background size 10M auto, background repeat round. Now we see the gray color, then the flower image repeated, then the main page content. Note the flower image comes from https://www.nicepng.com, which has tons of royalty-free PNG images, another source for you. Now there are a few additional attributes which are kind of esoteric, so I'm just omitting them for this session. The interested student will find the details in this source, https://www.w3.org/uppercase T_r/css-backgrounds-3. The background property. Finally, to reintroduce the background property. This is a shorthand where you can specify many property values from most of the properties we've discussed in this session. This works because the format of the values is unique enough for the browser to deduce what you mean. For example, .back, background, gray, URL _images/flower.png, 40%, 50%, /10M auto, round. Now, the browser recognizes gray as a color, so you obviously mean background color gray. Then the URL is clearly a pointer to an image, so you must mean background image, URL _images/flower.png. The 40%, 50% pair could be a background size or a background position entry, but background size elements using this notation must be preceded by a /, so the browser can deduce you mean background position 40%, 50%, and background size 10M auto. And round only applies to the background repeat property, so you clearly meant background repeat round. Looking back at the previous session, we now see that background linear gradient yellow, blue will be interpreted as background image linear gradient yellow, blue. While it may save a few keystrokes, it seems to me things will be much clearer to specify each property you need with its full name and not use the background shorthand, except possibly for gradients. My personal preference is to use background patterns that are not distracting from the content of each page for backgrounds for my pages. But of course, a lot depends on your content. And remember, the background features can be used on other elements, such as P, div, input, and button, for example. Recap. In this session, we examined ways to provide background images for your web pages. We noted that background color lays a basic underlying color, and all other background images are layered on top of that. Background images can be gradients or data items of category image, such as files with extensions of JPG, PNG, and so on. Background images can be expanded or shrunk and repeated horizontally or vertically, or both. The repetition can be adjusted to fit an even number of times. Background images can be positioned on the page. Coming up, in the next lesson, we explore using page borders to frame all or parts of your page. See you there.